So I had completely missed Mass Effect 5's insanely important teases until now. These 3 dots literally confirm a crazy interconnected theory on the new N7 and who controls them. And I finally figured out what these reddish glows actually mean, because it's been teased multiple times now in the exact same way. And last but not least, the music used in the new N7's clip actually told us way more than I originally thought, which again confirms a long-time theory on this channel about how everything connects. So without further ado, buckle up P7s, this one is a big one. And of course, this is part 3 of 3 in how every N7 day connects, so I highly recommend watching the first 2 parts before this. Otherwise, here's a very quick refresher of what we've discussed in the last 2 videos. First, in part 1, we established that the new N7 was likely an artificial intelligence with Shepard's data, making them a Shepard AI, and also that the Alliance is currently under Cerberus's control, making the Shepard AI under Cerberus's control as well. From there, we figured out that the Shepard AI's purpose is to monitor the new relay that Cerberus is building, and also that Liara intercepted the relay footage without permission. Because the N7's primary purpose is likely to prevent interference with the relay's construction, it likely received orders to eliminate Liara, who knows too much about it. And then, part 2 centered around the relay itself. The biggest revelation here was that the relay footage is likely showing us a date of 2190, but also that the Shepard AI received a distress signal in 2819. Through various interconnected theories, I theorized that both timelines coexisting was very possible, due to the nearby droning black hole that's likely acting as a wormhole to Andromeda. So very likely, the Milky Way's timeline will be in 2190, but the Helios clusters will be in 2819. The Colas Array Geth, who's currently with Liara, is likely proof of wormhole travel being legit, along with seeing the Tempest flying towards the Citadel. This current table, having Ryder and Jal in the Milky Way beside Liara on the Citadel, is proof enough for me that wormhole travel is probably already a thing. And the new relay that Cerberus is building through the Alliance is likely related to that, making wormhole travel its likely purpose. Finally, the Cerberus connections continued, with the construction ships resembling those of Initiative ships, which led to the ongoing theory of the benefactor being the current leader of Cerberus. And out of all the theories I mentioned here, the one centering around Cerberus, the dual timelines, and the multiple connections across all 4 games will be confirmed with these new teases. And they'll also answer these final questions I brought up in the previous videos. Why does the N7 nod to the Krogan? Who exactly is the benefactor? Why is the Colas Geth wearing clothes now? And of course, what is Jal trying to tell Liara here? So let's begin with the Krogan Civil War illustration from N7 Day 2025, and this first new tease that's blown my mind. Since this art was given to us, I didn't even register this as being a potential tease. However, it's probably the most important hint so far, because this circular pattern is literally a direct match to the other 3-dot pattern on the new N7's helmet from N7 Day 2024. In 2 different places, we can see this unique pattern. So right away, we have the connection we were looking for between the N7 and the Krogan. And what is the significance of this circle pattern? Mind-blowingly, it's worn by none other than the elusive man himself. The front of his jacket features this pattern prominently, and it's even on the cuffs of both arms. So undoubtedly, this 3-dot pattern is meant to represent Cerberus, since the elusive man is literally sporting that same symbol. With the mythology of Cerberus representing the 3-headed dog of Hades, it's the perfect and simplest way to refer to this infamous organization. And crazily enough, those are the exact same symbols we're seeing teased on the new N7's helmet, and on the helmet worn by this Krogan. And it's not just this singular Krogan featuring the Cerberus symbol. The 3 dots are on all of these Krogan helmets, which begs the question, why did these Krogan have armor and likely weapons too that have been supplied by Cerberus? Let's rewind for a second and think about the how first, because based on all the theorizing up until this point, it's very clear to me that the Cerberus equipment was handed off to the Krogan by the Shepherd AI. From the previous two parts, we figured out that the N7 likely got orders from the current leader of Cerberus, who's probably the benefactor, to eliminate Liara. However, before that, we saw them walking away from a Krogan who was wearing the same red glowing armor as the Krogan in the Civil War piece. And also, they were in a facility that featured canisters in Cerberus's brand colors, along with Cerberus's orange glowing lights. So this immediately tells us two things. The first is that the colors we're seeing in all the teases might have pretty important meanings, which is something we've gone over with the orangey colored relay. Obviously, there's so many Cerberus teases everywhere now that we can basically confirm the orange of this relay, linking it to that same pro-human group. And second, we can confirm now that the N7 nods to the Krogan behind the camera because it's likely handing off Cerberus equipment to said Krogan. This red glowing armor we initially saw, now being worn by the attacking Krogan here, is a clear sign that the Cerberus equipment handoff was successful. And also, we can see that the primary color scheme behind the Krogan here is that very same Cerberus orange, once again subtly showing us who's really behind this war. I've never been this certain with any theory on this channel, but with 100% certainty, Cerberus is definitely the one influencing this Krogan civil war. So now that we know the connection between the Shepherd AI and the initial Krogan, we can now finally guess at what's happening here with pretty high certainty too, which to me also confirms that all our major choices from the trilogy will matter in the next Mass Effect. In my analysis right after N7 Day, we established what everything here meant. This location is likely Tuchanka because of the architecture, the tank, and the Varen. Gamble has also confirmed that this civil war is likely between fellow Krogan, just in case that was unclear. Because of the tank here looking identical to the tanks from Tuchanka, I think this confirms the Milky Way timeline is likely only 4 years after the Reaper War in 2190. The Ezo weapons here also resemble known weapons from the trilogy as well, like this Executioner pistol. Also, we can see over here that the war is literally kicking off because the incoming Krogan are already under fire from their enemies. And as to who those enemies are, we can take a pretty good guess if this scene does take place shortly after the Reaper War, because as we saw on Tuchanka, there were already two groups of Krogan who despised each other. Wrex's Krogan were on one side, who were the more progressive Krogan, open to dialogue with other species like Shepard's humanity. However, the ones who opposed Wrex were more traditionalist Krogan, like his brood brother Reeve, who didn't want the Krogan to intermingle. And this clash between Wrex's clans and Reeve's followers is likely what we're seeing now. This older Krogan here has been in a lot of battles based on the number of scars they've received. And because of the joy in this Krogan's expression, they clearly love violence and war as much as Reeve's followers did, emphasized by the blood rage too, which means that the ones Cerberus has supplied in this civil war are likely Reeve's traditionalist Krogan, who probably want to see Wrex's regime toppled. Now to me, what this means more than anything else is that our major choices will matter in Mass Effect 5, because a civil war like this is undoubtedly linked to the overwhelming player statistics from the Mass Effect Legendary Edition. Back in 2021, BioWare released these two statistics, where 94% of players saved Wrex on Vermeer, and 96% of players cured the genophage. And since they're likely now teasing us with a game that will shortly take place after the Reaper War, Wrex's Krogan overpopulating the Milky Way is probably one of the top problems the Mass Effect team has attempted to answer, with this Krogan civil war being that likely answer. Cerberus has 100% supplied Reeve's followers with armor and weapons, and we know the pro-human group's goal has always been human supremacy. So very likely, what we're seeing here is Cerberus's attempt to pit the Krogan against each other, to curb the Krogan overpopulation. And most importantly, it means that the Mass Effect team team is literally trying to make major choices from the Legendary Edition critical plot points in Mass Effect 5, which to me means that everything else we've seen in the teases is also to that end as well. The deceased Geth and Quarian bodies in the Geth poster is probably because our Rannoch decision will matter, and with all the teases about the Kolis Geth being so prominent, it's likely the Mass Effect team's answer to the Destroy ending. This Krogan Civil War, more than anything though, is why I believe our major trilogy choices will matter, and also potentially why pre-production has taken 7 years, because there's a lot of choice variation that they need to take into account. I'm pretty sure they're even hinting at history repeating itself with the war here, because of the music they used in this clip. But we'll get to that later. For now though, my mind is honestly still blown that Cerberus is confirmed to be interfering here. And before we get to the second new mind-blowing tease, let's try to piece together exactly who the current leader of Cerberus could be. Because clearly, Cerberus is going to be important for the next game, and they're likely going to be one of the main villains in the next Mass Effect. In part 2, I went over why the most likely candidate for who leads Cerberus now is the Benefactor. They've been directly linked to building the new Cerberus-colored relay with these construction ships. And those ships look remarkably like the Benefactor-funded Initiative ships, just with a 90-degree turned engine shape. And with Cerberus clearly controlling the N7 program now, since their symbol is literally on the new N7's helmet, it's clear that Gian Garson's musings here were correct. All these human-led organizations, including the Alliance, are marching to the baton of an invisible conductor. And that invisible conductor is very likely to be the one running Cerberus now. So who is this mysterious invisible conductor who clearly controls the Alliance? Before all these new tease bombshells, I dedicated an entire video to exactly that and came up with these 9 traits that we for sure know are tied to the Benefactor. We know that they ordered Garson's death, are tied to Cerberus, have massive wealth, and knew about the Reapers in 2179. We also know that they joined the Initiative, trusted Alec Ryder over Garson, is likely in a leadership position, and doesn't care about the Milky Way. Most importantly though, they are desperate for Sam's technology, which allows for integration with organic species. Based on all these traits, I came to the conclusion that the Benefactor had to be a Cerberus agent of some kind, and now, with these 2 additional traits, I feel like the list of candidates has narrowed even more. From the teases, we know that the Shepard AI answers to who's likely the Benefactor in the Milky Way, which actually contradicts the known Benefactor traits of them having joined the Initiative and not caring about the Milky Way at all. I'm very positive though that these 2 traits are accurate, based on conversations they had with Alec Ryder, so to me, this only leaves the last trait as to how to solve this contradiction. Garson said that the Benefactor was an invisible conductor. Invisible is a very specific word choice to use, and I think this is the key as to who the Benefactor is. Because to be truly invisible, you would have to not have a body, which to me only leaves one possible solution. The Benefactor is most likely an artificial intelligence with no body, similar to an entity like Edie before she took Dr. Eva Corey's form, which would mean that the leader of Cerberus is currently an AI, which does make sense with Cerberus's history. The pro-human group had taken the Luna VI and turned it into Edie with the help of Sovereign's tech as well. And the Elusive Man also created Dr. Eva Corey, a gyroid who performed various tasks for Cerberus before meeting its end on Mars. Further to that, the Elusive Man was obsessed with Reaper technology too, which was obviously also based on artificial sentience. So more than any other group, Cerberus has been involved with AIs the most. It wouldn't surprise me in the least if, after the fall of the Elusive Man, the succession plan involved an invisible AI taking over for him, unbeknownst to anyone else. And if this is the case, then I actually think it's very likely that the Benefactor could technically exist in multiple places at once. There could be a version of the invisible Benefactor in the Helios cluster, directing Cerberus agents there, and also in the Milky Way, ordering the Shepherd AI around, which would of course also mean that AIs would be controlling other AIs, if the Shepherd AI theory is legit. I personally think this type of plot might be what the Mass Effect team is going for, because it would be very relevant to today's AI-obsessed times. Now, as to which AI they are, I'll leave that for a Patreon post, because I honestly think it's a brilliant idea they're cooking up that I don't want to spoil if it's true. You can join my Patreon over here if you'd like to catch that theory that's been 3 years in the making. Something I will say now though is that the benefactor's known motivation is to obtain Sam, which likely has to do with their ultimate goal. Alright, so that's everything to do with the first new tease completely wrapped up. And the second new tease is also tied to Cerberus and the red glowing armor they've provided to the Krogan. Because crazily enough, Cerberus is also using that same technology in their new relay. If you've been around this channel for a year or two, you've probably seen this wild reveal of the Milky Way's galactic disk above Alcara. I genuinely lost my mind when I realized that this was the same disk shown in the Game Awards trailer, but flipped, which spawned its own crazy theory that I won't go into here. Needless to say right now though, finding out the origins of this red glowing technology blew my mind in the exact same way. And we've actually seen this specific reddish glow in 3 different teases so far. The first was on the Cerberus-controlled relay in these 5 different places. The second was with the N7 silencer pistol, which is also something I had forgotten about until this realization. And finally, we saw the red glow with the Krogan's armor, not once, but twice. So what does this reddish glow signify? I'm pretty sure there's only one thing it could represent, which is the white reddish glow of the Reapers. Back when I first analyzed this, I mistakenly referred to it as simply red lights. But the Reapers' eyes and beam have always featured a reddish glow on the outside with a clear whitish glow on the inside, which is exactly what we're seeing now in all of these instances. The new mobile relay's glowing tech matches this white to red lighting perfectly, and so does the Shepherd AI's silencer pistol, along with the Krogan's new armor. The whiter glow on the inside and the red bleeding out the sides, just like the Reaper's beams. So with this insane revelation that seems obvious in hindsight, it's very clear that all of this technology has Reaper origins, which makes perfect sense with Cerberus's history and obsession with the Reapers. In Mass Effect 3, the Elusive Man became obsessed with using Reaper technology to enhance his own soldiers, which led to Reaper integration, not just with their foot soldiers, but even the Elusive Man himself. So it comes as no surprise that after the Reaper War, this utilization of Reaper tech has continued in relays, weapons, and even armor. Looking through the Art of the Mass Effect Trilogy book, I also found a description of Cerberus's forces that included common features for all its enemies. And 2 of these common features included the coloring and rectangular eye slits. In comparing the Krogan to the Cerberus Guardian, they both have similar yellowish armor, but the eye slit looking shape is on the front of the Krogan's armor instead. And the best example of this white reddish glow was used in this illustration of a Cerberus soldier, showing the Reaper glow's bleed perfectly. Also, I double checked the reddish lights seen in other armor and weapons like Shepard's, but none of them had the whiter inside glow that Cerberus's Reaper tech featured. Other non-Reaper technology was more of a solid red, rather than the reddish bleed we keep seeing in all these teases. So with this, I feel pretty confident that everything we're seeing here is Cerberus once again using Reaper tech for their own purposes. And as we saw during the Reaper War, this clearly would give them a higher power advantage, and most likely give these traditionalist Krogan the edge they need to overpower Wrex's clans. And we'll go over this later, but it's likely that Cerberus handed over this Reaper tech with much darker intentions in mind, probably involving indoctrination. For now though, that's everything with the second new tease wrapped up. So it's finally time for the third and final tease that once again blew my mind when I realized its implications, which is the meaning of the music in the N7 Day 2023 clip. three songs included here were Eden Prime from Mass Effect 1, an unnamed Remnant Tech song from Andromeda, and Erelak Company from Mass Effect 3. First off, Eden Prime was a former major Prothean planet where we eventually awakened Javik from cryosleep. Back in Mass Effect 1, this is why there was a Prothean beacon there for Shepard to discover, because the Protheans left their warning on that planet. So very likely, this Prothean connection is what this part of the clip is meant to signify. Which is then followed up by the unnamed Remnant Tech song right before PB tackles Ryder.
Wait!
And this is the part that's blown my mind. I've had a long-standing theory about the Protheans being connected to Remtech, and these two songs back-to-back basically confirm it for me. Adamus had first sparked the initial theory, where they had theorized that the new image of Remtech we've been teased with is actually Prothean technology, to which Gamble had replied, or maybe it's ... And I've gone over what this means way too many times to count, but I do solidly believe now that he did mean, or maybe it's both. Remnant Tech is very clearly a form of Prothean tech, but more evolved based on the clear similarities between the two. And now we're hearing music in this clip that directly goes from a Prothean-related song to a Remtech-related one. So with this also supporting the theory, I think it's very much a lock that the Jardan who made Remtech are a form of evolved Protheans. One of my earlier musings on them potentially being the Inusanon from Ilos is most likely false, especially with this new discovery. So somehow, a group of Protheans escaped the Milky Way before being wiped out by the Reapers. And by the time they reached the Helios cluster, they had evolved or transformed themselves into the Jardan. What's pretty wild about this is that potentially we've already gotten hints about how they did so with the Colas array from Part 2's video. We had gone over previously how a mysterious group of Geth had put together the Colas array using strange technology that Aquarian wasn't able to recognize. And potentially, this strange tech was either a form of Prothean tech not yet discovered, or maybe even Remtech from before some Protheans left the Milky Way. Now, I'm not entirely sure about this yet, but with this Colas Geth now wearing clothes, they might have stumbled across the Jardan after traversing a wormhole to a different system. And maybe while there, the Jardan influenced them to become more individualistic by wearing clothes. Or it could be as simple as the Colas Geth developing their own personalities without outside influence. Who knows? I do think though that somehow the Colas Geth used similar technology as the Protheans who fled the Milky Way when they became the Jardan, based on this strange technology reference. Now before we go over the final question on what exactly Jal is saying to Liara here, let's finish discussing the music from the N7 Day 2023 clip, because the last song is actually from the Erelak Company mission that involved the Rachni. In that mission, the Erelak Company Krogan were tasked with finding their missing scouts, which eventually led to the discovery of the Rachni Queen or Rachni Clone, depending on your choices from Noveria. And I think the reason this song was used again in the N7's clip is because of what Cerberus intends with the traditionalist Krogan. Since the Rachni were known for being a highly aggressive species, they created problems for other Milky Way races because of their constant territorial expansion, which is likely a parallel that could be used to describe the Krogan's exponential expansion after the Reaper War. More than that though, in the Erelak Company's mission, we saw that the Rachni were being used against their will for the Reaper's cause through indoctrination. And since this song plays right when we see the N7 nod to the Krogan behind it, I think history is once again repeating itself. But this time, it's Cerberus doing the indoctrinating of the traditionalist Krogan, bending them to their human supremacy ways. Through the Reaper tech armor, these Krogan might literally be fighting because Cerberus has indoctrinated them to do so. But even though it's pretty clear that Cerberus and the Benefactor are one of the main villains of the next Mass Effect, I don't think they're the biggest concern. Very likely, the much bigger threat is what made the Tempest crew flee back to the Milky Way. We know that the Shepherd AI received an Andromeda distress signal from the year 2819, and after that, we then saw what's likely the Tempest flying towards the Citadel. Most likely, due to wormhole traversal, they're in the year 2190 when they meet with Liara and the Colas Geth, where Jal is clearly distressed. I've said in prior videos that potentially Jal is pointing towards the Colas Geth in anger, but honestly, I think it's more likely that he's trying to tell Liara why the Tempest crew fled in the first place. Clearly, no one else on the Citadel seems worried, so the most likely reason as to why Jal is disturbed is the Andromeda distress signal that the Helios cluster must have sent. And the only other connection we've gotten to the Helios cluster so far is the Remtech music, which we've established is connected to the Jardan. So to me, the only explanation as to why the Tempest crew left the Helios cluster is because the Jardan probably returned and potentially might have threatened the inhabitants of Meridian. This then could have caused Ryder's crew to flee to the Milky Way, maybe through the black hole in the middle of the Helios cluster. And now, Jal is trying to warn Liara that maybe the Jardan are going to follow them, breaking the peace in this galaxy too. Which is why I think the music in the N7 Day 2023 clip flows from hints about the Jardan being evolved Protheans to the traditionalist krogan being used. Clearly, the Milky Way has its own problems to deal with, like the Krogan Civil War. However, there's also a larger looming force incoming with the Jardan. So after connecting all the N7 days from 2021 to 2025, these are the theories that I feel very strongly about. The current leader of Cerberus is probably the Benefactor, who is controlling the Alliance and the new N7. And Cerberus has continued to use Reaper technology and is now making relays, guns, and armor with it. The new N7 is likely a Shepherd AI, tasked with supplying the traditionalist Krogan with Reaper tech and also to watch over the mobile relay's successful construction. It likely has orders to eliminate Liara because she and the Colas Geth discovered it without Cerberus's permission. Also, the nearby black hole to the mobile relay is probably already acting as a wormhole to Andromeda, based on the distress signal arriving from 2819, which is perfect for the Benefactor's plans, since they probably want to use this mobile relay to connect the Milky Way and Andromeda. And as the potential leader of Cerberus, the Benefactor has also provided Reeve's followers with Reaper tech to decrease the Krogan's overpopulation. To me, all of these theories confirm the Milky Way's timeline is shortly after the Reaper War, probably in 2190 based on the relay date, which is the same date the Tempest crew have returned to after fleeing the Helios cluster. Very likely, they were attacked by the Jardan, who are a form of evolved Protheans, and now might set their eyes on conquering the Milky Way. Now, the best part of all the theories I've mentioned here is that all of them are ongoing plots from the Trilogy or Andromeda. And if I'm reading the tea leaves right, everything is going to connect, and with it, our major choices will matter. I have so many other theories that I'm saving for closer to N7 Day, which I literally can't wait to share with y'all. But until then, you can watch this video next on how the major Mass Effect 5 teases are connected to Shepard a little too perfectly, setting up a franchise-altering role for them in the next game. See you there.
Logging you out, P7.